Reminder, we're brought to you by Bamboo from Torpy. If you want to get 10% off, use the promo code OURGAME. It's all caps at the moment. That might change in the next week or two. We'll talk about Tipperary and Cork, and actually we'll be moving on to Kilkenny against Antrim then, which is in Division 1 Group B. So who of the traditional three, and obviously Tipperary, Cork and Kilkenny are always talked about as the traditional three, having won so many All-Irelands between them. Who do you think of the traditional three is most likely to contend this week if we're to just go on the basis of what we saw last week, which is a very small sample size, but look, the teams hadn't hurled for 6 months before
that. If you were to go from the reaction of most Corkonians after last weekend, like, it's a foregone conclusion.
Cork are back.
Yeah.
Cork are back.
Well, that seems to be what people think, and I do think perspective needs to be kept here. Like, I've gone all in on Cork a couple of times, and they've broke my heart from the point of view of, you're just thinking, okay, they have all the ability, they have all the hurlers that they need, and then there's been failings in big. Absolutely walking through them. So, like, I'm definitely, like, last weekend was a very good result. It did have the look of an exhibition game to them. Cork will win. If you try to play a score fest against Cork, Cork will win nearly every time. You're going to have to see an awful lot more. I would say, probably toughness to the play. I'm going to have to see it on a regular basis. Like, after last weekend, while Tipp blew a lead against Limerick, they still drew with the reigning Munster, All-Ireland and League champions. And that's something that no other team was able to do last year. And they were missing the likes of Seamus Callanan. There was no Brendan Matter. Paddy Matter only came on at the end as well.
John McGrath didn't play.
On the basis, Noel McGrath as well. No sign of John McGrath yet. So, like, on the basis of last weekend, Kenny were good against Dublin, but, like, I've not been disingenuous to Dublin. I don't, like, if Cork played last year's All-Ireland finalists last weekend and were very good. Tipp played last year's All-Ireland champions and were very good. Kilkenny played a Dublin team that only beat Laois last year. So, as the barometer based on last weekend, I would probably say Tipp, because I think at least they found a way to be really, really competitive against Limerick and put themselves in a winning position. That's, no other team can say that really over the last 15 months. So I would say, based on last weekend, I'd probably say Tipp.
So in a way, Cork, they showed us again that when they're on top, they can be flat track bullies and absolutely kill teams, like burst them apart and put up a big score. They didn't show us anything about being able to dig themselves out of a trench per se. Is that the kind of the point you're making? We didn't see anything new.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd love to see on a wet, miserable day
in
when
Stoke?
The ball's not maybe a miserable Wednesday night in Stoke, when the ball is just not coming into your hands straight away, when there's a lad absolutely dragging out you, when it's real physical, when it's a real miserable game where dogs are needed to really grind their teeth and get stuck in, how will Cork react to that? And I think that's the big question.
Do you know, a couple of years ago when they lost that All-Ireland semi-final to Limerick, and in extra time they brought back Seamus Harnedy and Darragh Fitzgibbon onto the field, even though they were fairly crocked. So that's a reflection of where the management thought the panel was at that moment in time. Now, Kieran Kingston wasn't over that particular season. But do you think that there are signs now that the panel is a bit broader, that there are players that they feel like they can trust? It's early days for the likes of Aaron Connolly and Shane Barrett, but certainly Shane Kingston is a leading light at this point. Luke Meade showed signs. Seamus Harnedy, obviously, like, he's fit right now. He was actually somewhat quiet, although at times maybe I give credit to Robbie O'Flynn rather than him, because they look very similar out on the pitch at the moment. Jack O'Connor, he got his goal, quiet enough otherwise. Patrick Horgan, obviously, he's going to be class. So is there more in reserve? Like, do they have a stronger panel?
I do think they do. Jack O'Connor probably played last year for the first time. Shane Barrett is only kind of coming in this year. He's only kind of coming in this. Dalton didn't play at the weekend, and he's obviously a massive, massive option too. I do think they have more options. Colin Spillane didn't play at the weekend, who's probably their most important defender. So they definitely have more strength in depth than they did. And even last year, if the only thing from their point of view that comes good out of last year is that a lot of guys got exposure at that level. Then that's a positive for them, because throwing lads in the first year, you don't really know how lads are going to react. If you've come in that in your second year and you've had a bit of turbulence the first year, you've seen what it's all about, you've learned what it's all about, you're much better placed over the winter to say, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z to get up to this level. And you would hope from their point of view, and with Donal O'Grady's influence, who Cork people, like, as regards Donal O'Grady, the esteem that he's held in for what he has done for Cork and what people think he can do for this current Cork team is huge. So, like, you would imagine from a squad point of view, as you were asking there, that they are in a better place. They've had some of that. Those guys have had that exposure and know what it's all about, and that's key coming in the second year.
And it was interesting how many times that TG Carr panned over to Donal O'Grady during the game. Obviously, he's worked with him plenty over the years, so maybe it's sort of a fondness towards him. So we'll see how that pans out. I do think that squad is improving. It's just like we talked about it, the athleticism, it was there. But again, we just haven't seen what they're going to be like in the trenches. And they've probably let the supporters down a couple of times in terms of being in those tight games and not quite getting it done. And that Kilkenny game in 2019, I think that was probably one of the more damning ones, because you thought after 2018, right, it didn't quite happen against Limerick, maybe just using the bench improperly was the issue. But then the just absolute fade out was, that must have been a fair one to stomach.
Yeah, I think Darragh Fitzgibbon's a big one, Shane, as well. He obviously wasn't fit last year and only came on against Tipperary. He looks like he's absolutely bouncing, looks totally re-energised as well. And just what he offers in the middle of the field, he got 3 points, he missed another 3. Sitting back into defence, the speed, breaking the line that he offers, and players like that are huge. Like he's an all-star in 2018. And same, I think he was an all-star in 18 or 19. Sorry, I can't remember. One of those years, Mark Coleman was the same. He got an all-star in his first year. And those guys have a good bit of experience under their belt. They've probably seen the highs and they've seen the lows already. So you'd be expecting Coleman, you'd be expecting Fitzgibbon, Shane Kingston. These should be the new faces of Cork hurling. Yeah. But again, as regards how will they react when there's loads of obstacles in the way, how will they react in a game that they shouldn't win technically when things are going against them? That's going to be really interesting to see how they react to that.
It might have even been 17, because they got to an All-Ireland semi-final, lost to Waterford. I remember Coleman had a good year up until the performance.
17, Coleman won one in 17, Fitzgibbon won one in 18.
Brick gave him a tough day in that All-Ireland semi-final as well. Lots of comments coming in here as well. We'll come to it in a little while. Do you see John Conlon staying at centre-back from Clare, says Conor Linehan, so we'll have to remember that one. Kevin Coleman, do you expect more integration of the young guys in Tipp? Started a very experienced side against Limerick, aside from 1 or 2. And do we expect it? Like, Brian O'Mara is going to miss the remainder of the league campaign after suffering a fractured arm against Limerick. And that happened late on in the game. Quite an unfortunate one. He'd had a steady game. I don't think he set the world alight, but a guy being thrown into the Lions' Den against Limerick, I think you're going to more than take that. Much like Brian McGrath, full back. Some great ball went into Seamus Flanagan, and the form he's in, his personal development is, as a player, has been really, really impressive. It's only 3 or 4 years ago that he couldn't get on the under-21 team, and now it looks very hard to drop him from the senior team. So, and it's because he, as a player, whether it's down to the coach or not, keeps getting better. But Brian McGrath still did quite well on him. So do we expect to see more integration of younger players? Maybe Paddy Cadell might get in there, maybe Keane Darcy get a start. But if the likes of Keane Darcy is going to get a start inside, or whoever's going to play in the forward line, more good ball has to go in, because the more I look back at that game at the weekend, very few nice deliveries went in, and maybe that's part of the reason that Tipperary didn't score from play in the second half.
Yeah, I don't expect too much integration, because I don't think there's time to integrate. They put in a couple of lads last week.
But why fail the same way as last year? Because it's without bringing through 1 or 2, you're not going to bridge the gap with Limerick. And you know what? Maybe no matter who Tipperary put on the team this year, maybe Liam Sheedy just doesn't quite have the resources playing-wise or the experience in the younger lads yet.
The only thing I'd say on that is they brought in 2 last weekend. They would have been delighted with how the 2 of them got on. Brian O'Mara's gone now. Brian McGrath, you'd imagine, will play again. Did well last weekend. So someone else will get to come in at wing-back. I've kind of said this before. It's integration to me, and integrating young players into a team is not changing the team too much and integrating, one at cornerback, maybe one at wing back, maybe one at wing forward. That's to me is integration, because the team will like 10 to 12 of your starters. So they play, and you integrate the new players around them, and then you get to see what they're actually like with the the regulars beside them. If you're putting in 5 or 6, and you're starting, let's say, a new cornerback and a new wing back on the same side, that's very difficult. I think it's difficult to actually give a fair reflection on yourself in that case. No more than if you're starting a wing forward and a centre forward, 2 new players there. They're not used to playing together. They're not used to that level. Whereas if you were starting a guy wing forward, or you're starting, say, Paddy Cadell midfield, and we'll just say Noel McGrath playing midfield beside him, well then, to me, that's a true reflection of Paddy Cadell and what he can do at that level. And just say if Paddy matters behind him and Brendan matters behind him as well, and we'd say the Bonner is in front of him, that's a true reflection of what he can actually do, because he's playing with seasoned guys there that know what's going on. So to me, that's I don't think I was ever thinking that Limerick or Tip were going to put in 5 or 6 guys. I think
it's unrealistic talk. Like, when you were breaking onto the Offaly team, for example, would you have been thrown in with experience around you, or did you ever have that situation where the first 15, we'll say, played a league game, and then there was a challenge match organised, and you would have been thrown in with a load of players that probably weren't going to start the league game, so it wasn't a fair reflection? I mean, I'd say most people, whether it's a club team or whatever, they've felt that at times, that the manager puts out a second team just to give them a game, almost placate the players, hopefully see a player or two. But you might feel that even half the time during this challenge game where you're getting your run, he mightn't even be fully paying attention to it, because he's more focused on the first 15. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've had both sides of the scale. So when it was coming through, I've kind of been playing in league games, and you might have Ger Oakley beside you, Rory Hannafy outside you in the half line. So you'd have loads of experience around you. And then when all of a sudden you're gone to maybe number 20 or 21, you're playing a Walsh Cup game where maybe, I think I started a Walsh Cup game fullback or centre back maybe even, and all of a sudden you're expected to almost do something different. From playing cornerback, you're expected to go and play in a different position and almost adapt to that, whereas I would have been much happier to be playing with the first 15 at cornerback in the position that I'm going to be playing in.
So you're a fish out of water then at centre back all of a sudden, and expected to develop into a centre back overnight.
Kind of, yeah. And sure, realistically, if you're going, like, I was never going to be playing centre back or anything like that. So I'm a big believer in trialing guys where you actually want to play them, and trialing them around the guys that you want them to be playing with. So I don't expect too many changes for Tip. I'd say like max probably 3 new faces, and they're going to want to get a win this weekend. Like, they should have won last weekend, and then all of a sudden, if they go out this weekend and ship a defeat, then you're not that you're chasing your tail, but they could have had a win the first weekend. They didn't have a win. Now all of a sudden they have 1 point after 2 games, and then if you lose another game, then all of a sudden the face of your league looks an awful lot different. So I think both teams will be going pretty much gung-ho to win at the weekend, and I wouldn't be expecting too much experimentation on either side. Yeah,
but at the same time, you do, like, we're agreeing, you do have to have room to give guys a chance. I mean, I don't think anyone back at 2014 really knew all that much about Cathal Barrett. I'm sure people are familiar with his name in Tipperary, but that he'd be very quickly establishing himself as a brilliant cornerback for Tipperary and oust Michael Cahill from the position. I don't think anyone was thinking that. So you do have to give lads an opportunity, and like there probably will be 1 or 2 on either side. I'd imagine Cork will give the likes of Shane Barrett more time. Maybe they'll give Jack O'Connor another game, and Alan Connolly, maybe he'll even get a start as well, or maybe they'll keep using him from the bench. The couple of goals he got will be a bit of a boon to him.
Interesting, Shane. Will we see, like Cork, as I said, are going to want to play this challenge game style, real open style of game. Tip didn't allow Limerick to play that last weekend, and it'll be interesting to see if they bring that same sort of swarm and that same sort of intensity, that same sort of not giving the opposition time on the ball. Will we see that this weekend again, or will we see the a kind of a shootout? That's going to be interesting to me.
This is a perfect opportunity to see what the identity of these teams are going to be for the year. Number one, we've talked about Cork. Can they dig in the trenches? That remains to be seen. Number two, Tipperary, was that one swallow doesn't a summer make? that they played that way against Limerick, but they mightn't necessarily do it against Cork? Do they feel that there are some games where we'll enter a shootout and we are going to actually come out on top? And there's nothing to say that they necessarily would. I mean, Cork put up 5-22 and probably could have scored more. That's serious scoring. And Tipperary looked very blunt up front. So maybe a shootout wouldn't shoot Tipperary. I just want to mention one other player that I wonder would Liam Sheedy be thinking of throwing in this weekend, and assuming he's fit as well. Craig Morgan, a player.
I was just thinking about him, because we haven't talked about him much, and he offers a lot to me now.
Yeah, because Barry Heffernan was used corner back, or in the full back line. Obviously, it's 2-3 in the full back line. It depends on what's going on, but at times marking Adrian Breen, and if good ball is going in, that's not an ideal matchup for a 6'4" guy, because Adrian Breen can turn on a sixpence and knock it over for anywhere. So maybe if Tipperary develops the likes of Craig Morgan, and there's another option or two here or there, you need to be able to have different horses for different courses. And I struggle with this. I'm not sure what Tipperary's best half back line is, because there's some great options there, whether you're looking at Seamus Kennedy staying at centre back, and I was impressed with plenty of what he did. Barry Heffernan is a massive physical presence, and he can run all day, and when he carries the ball out, you often see players trying to pull and drag out of him, but he stays going forward. You understand this, as you get older as a player, you start running into contact, and all of a sudden you realise, I'm not actually moving forward anymore. I used to move forward, and now I have to go backwards and try and strike it on the back foot. So if you have somebody like Seamus Kennedy who's on running on the top of the ground, and the same with Barry Heffernan, and then Ronan Maher as well, even if you had the three of those as a half back line, that's a serious proposition. Then it's fitting all the pieces around them. And that's the thing with Tip, unlike Limerick, who have 25, 30 options, and you feel they're so versatile, you could put them all into different positions, and their game plan is so well established. For Tipperary, they're still trying to pull this thing together.
Yeah, there's a small bit of that to it, all right, Jen. They don't know their best team, and particularly probably at the back. You probably have a fair idea of what probably 5 of the 6 forwards are going to be, but at the back you don't. I did like the look of Seamus Kennedy. I think going with those big athletic players who can get back and cover a lot of space, but can also do the Kyle Hayes on it, break a tackle and break the line and put teams on the back foot. Both Heffernan and Kennedy can definitely do that. Maybe Ronan Maher not as much, but he's so good on the ball, and his delivery of ball in is so good. And you see as a half back now as well, the amount of ground you need to be able to cover when you're coming up against a Tom Morrissey or a Gerard Hegarty and these guys. So I think they're looking at more mobility in that half back line in particular, probably half back line and even midfield as well. Probably not, to be honest with you, it's probably that middle eight that they're looking at that mobility from. So it'd be interesting to see where Brendan Maher fits into the pieces and where Pádraig Maher fits in as well. Would it be fair to say if Pádraig Maher's not playing the half back line, he's not playing anywhere for Tip?
I would say possibly not, because the full back line is a very unforgiving position these days and demands serious pace and agility. And he is himself and Noel McGrath are two players who look like they've kind of leaned up a bit. And I don't know if you've ever heard this about Cristiano Ronaldo, that once he hit 30, every year he was looking to lose, I think it was a kilo in terms of weight. Now obviously he's just becoming more and more lean with that. So maybe that's the approach from players that are, that little bit older as well. But I would imagine it would be the half back line if he was going to play anywhere. He might be under pressure to get in this year. But I thought it was interesting that Paddy Maher was brought in rather than maybe Paddy Cadell, because I thought Cadell is somebody who'd get more time this year. But Paddy was brought in late on when Brian O'Mara got injured. So that to me suggests that that Liam Sheedy still sees a role for him. I think Brendan Maher could end up being that travelling number 4 this year, or maybe a sweeper, depending on, again, that's the versatility that Limerick have. Certain players in the Tipperary team have that as well. So a couple of other comments have come in. You can jump in on the back of that if you want. John Collins with plenty of positive comments for the show, so appreciate that, John. Michael, I'll come back to Michael Lucy's comment, but John Collins also added in. On Cork, I'd have concerns as to the defensive capability of Mark Coleman and the hurling ability of Damien Cahalane, both central characters in a defence that wasn't really tested last weekend. Now, to be fair, I do think Damien Cahalane had a good game. The odd time people question is hurling, but still, it's only a couple of years ago that he punished Clare by carrying ball upfield and delivering it well.
The thing about Mark Coleman is, and I agree with his question, and I agree with the premise of it, teams will try and make him defend. Teams will not try and let him dictate if he tries to sit back into that pocket at number 6, which he probably will try and do. So I think teams will try and go after him, try and make him pick up someone, or make him make a decision that he's going to have to come out the field and drag him away from that area. We know how good he is on the ball. It's like what Brick did in the 2017 All Ireland semi final. It's really kind of bring him into a battle, and I think that's what teams will try and do. So it's going to be interesting to see if he stays at number 6. I think that's how teams will go after him. Again, with a good few of the Cork boys, we know what they're like on the ball. It's just what they're going to be like without the ball, and if teams make them uncomfortable and put them in uncomfortable positions without the ball.
Yeah, and are they savages without the ball? I think Owen Cadigan and Colin Spillane would eat you
without salt.
Yeah, they would.
But it's just a matter of, not saying everybody has to do that, but it's just a matter of getting that savage kind of mentality. And as we said before, that savage mentality is just getting in a lad's face, putting pressure on him. It's not necessarily leaving him on the back of his arse or anything like that.
Conor Linehan asked, what about Alan Tynan? So for people who don't know, Alan Tynan was an underage dual player for Tipperary, but also was playing rugby and won the Colleges Cup with Cistercian in Roscrea. And he looked like he would go on and, could be brilliant at any sport. So he played with Ireland under 20. He was with Munster as well. And I actually went down a rabbit hole of what, because I knew he was back with Tipperary. And I went down a rabbit hole of watching some of the rugby videos of him there about a week or two ago, just to see what physical shape he's in. And he has great feet, great pace, that type of thing. But as other players have found out over the years, it can be very difficult to just hit the ground running after giving up hurling for a couple of years.
Yeah, and again, if he's not integrated throughout the league, how are they going to know whether he's up to that level as well? But I'd imagine he's probably playing a bit of chase up just on the time that he would have missed. I believe there was a potential of a contract on the table for him in France as well to go and play over there, even though he saw very little game time at Munster. And just chatting to some rugby aficionados, they were very surprised that he didn't see much game time at Munster, because they thought he was very well thought of down there, but that might point to more of some of the problems that are in Munster at the moment, more than anything else, more than Alan Tynan's ability as a rugby player. But interesting to see that Sheedy has called him in. Obviously thinks he can offer something physically. He would have played very, very little with Roscrea in recent years, so he's playing a lot of catch-up at the moment. And this sort of year doesn't suit probably a guy that's playing catch-up. Be interesting to see how he's integrated. Will he get 10 minutes here? Will he get 15 minutes there? Will they, the likes of Stephen O'Brien was thrown in coming back from football to hurling. He played a few games, maybe didn't get on as well as people expected, and ended up back with the footballers as well. So I just don't know if the year the way it's laid out will suit him. Your inter-county season is very, very short. Your contact time, Liam Sheedy's contact time with Alan Tynan is from April 19th until, what are we looking at? Mid to late August, so that's 4 months.
Whatever day the All Ireland final is.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's the max time you can have with him is 4 months, which is very, very. Is it May, June, July, August? 4 months, which is very, very little for a player who has played very little hurling to get up to inter-county standard. And this isn't Joe McDonough or Christy Regan standard. This is elite All Ireland contender standard. So I'm not sure if he's going to feature much, and if this maybe is a longer term project.
Yeah, and Daniel Kennedy added in, he said, sound skipping my comment. I missed his comment there because I'm doing a couple of things here at the minute, so sorry about that, Daniel. He had asked about Alan Tynan, but also Billy McCarthy. So if Billy McCarthy, who obviously
they reckon.
Yeah, he had that horrendous injury a couple of years ago, a knee injury. It was probably not too dissimilar to what happened to Tom Parsons when he played for Mayo against Galway a couple of years ago. So yeah, the talk is July. If he hits the ground running and is able to get back to the form that he showed in 2018, he could be a valuable asset. Because Tipperary have a lot of forwards that are fairly similar in the sense of they're lovely, silky players, but Billy McCarthy is a guy who can win his own ball, and he's the sort of guy that when the team isn't playing well, he actually does play well and stands out, which is a good sign of a lad, a firefighter out there. So I think he
was one of the few that stood up in that bad 2018 season. In fairness, one of the very few.
Yeah. So a lot of the players need the team to be on the front foot. I mean, that often happens with certain amount of silky players. Once the team is on the front foot, yeah, you'll dance all over the opposition. But then if things are going badly, you need a few lads to sort of drag you out of the fire.
Oh, give me one of those lads every day of the week. The boys that'll deliver. That you know what you're going to get from them every day. Give me one of the boys. Give me one of those lads that if you've been beaten by 10 points, he plays better than if you're winning by 10 points.